You got a school here that's working fine, growing, great reputation, wonderful accreditation. But all of a sudden, the church comes over and tells me, you're going to take care of the school. You need to take care of your own house. We don't need your help. We don't need that type of financial help.
It is the nature of man to choose, at times, the wrong over the right.
You fired us. What did we do wrong?
Things get in the way of the mission, and it's pride, I think it's money, and I think it's a loss of focus.
The church thought nobody was going to be paying attention. They would just replace the board and that would be that, and we would move on. And
I am at the meeting. You're still not answering the question. You responded to me. And well, speak. Tell us, why did you change out the board?
This is not positive moving forward for the school.
do we need to talk to the church then?
Turner!
Change the bylaws. In the absence of truth, what are we supposed to do? Just continue to be frustrated?
You are a customer of the school.
Answer the question!
We're not a small faction.
The Christian community is going to have rifts.
Why are we having these problems?
It's almost like they're jealous that the school is so successful.
Facing some of the coldest conditions in memory, the great Lone Star State is suffering.
People want to know, when is my power coming back on?
When the power is going to come back on.
We have heard from thousands of you telling us you're frustrated, angry, and in dire need of someplace warm.
Millions have gone without power for 3 days.
I went days without power, constantly searching for food that wasn't there.
Is there a chance this could be over with Thursday or Friday, or are we looking that these outages could be extended through the weekend?
The Valentine's Day freeze would take a severe toll on the Speedway campus. Substantial flooding heavily affected much of the building. Leaks and electrical damage could be found throughout, but the brunt of the damage would hit the Fellowship Hall basement directly under the sanctuary. The damage in the basement was supposedly so extensive that only a handful of people have even seen it.
The parents are complaining because the children have not been able to use the cafeteria or the downstairs area. It's my understanding that the repairs aren't going to be completed for another 2 years, which surprises me. I wouldn't think that it would have been that extensive, but I don't know.
Around this time, the former school board was dealing with their own internal problems as well.
What was surprising to me is, in my 40 plus years in business, and I've been on many boards, I've served on boards, I've served for boards, I have never ever seen a situation where there's been an internal vote by the members of the board unanimously asking for one board member to be removed.
Continuity director, that was established when we did the bylaws. That position was set up to be someone that would bring continuity, and that we wouldn't rewrite history when things came up, and there was an institutional memory of school prior, school current, so you could use that in school looking forward. 4 members of Hyde Park Baptist Church, which were on the school board at the time, sent a request to Dr. Bowman to see if he would consider replacing Kent as continuity director.
And it had to do with inappropriate behavior, which was mostly dealing with bulliness, obnoxious behavior, and not holding respect for the ladies that were on the board.
They weren't asking that Kent be released from his church position as executive pastor, only from the continuity director.
There was clear evidence that at the level of the chairman of the deacons, chairman of the trustees, and at the pastoral executive level, they did not want to look into this matter.
It was in his judgment that Kent was going to be retained as continuity director.
About the same time, there were reports that Mr. Jennings had been bullying female employees. Mr. Jennings would say things to women like he wanted to have a private meeting. And that was very intimidating to the women who reported it and made them feel very uncomfortable. And when they asked for someone else to be at the meeting, Mr. Jennings indicated there would be no meeting. Nobody has ever said anything like he sexually harassed people or anything like that. It was more of an intimidation kind of approach. And the church hired an outside person to investigate that.
She didn't find anything unlawful or particularly intimidating, bullying, or otherwise inappropriate. She would further state that Jennings' actions could be characterized as a plea of collaboration. However, some within the school board had some questions about this report.
She wrote 2 reports. Nobody really knows what the reports said. There's a question about whether this was the first report or the second report, or whether it was her report at all.
While the Jennings investigation is a notable part of this story, we have to go back to 2020 to get closer to the start of things. Facing a decline in attendance and finances, leadership at Hyde Park Baptist Church formed 2 special task forces. One to analyze the financial management of the church's open membership fitness center located on the Corey's campus, and one to, quote, determine the highest and best use of Hyde Park Baptist Church assets to promote the church's ministry. Out of this second task force came 2 final reports on the school, independently concluded and produced by 2 members of the task force. Fred Heldenfels, the president of a local precast concrete conglomerate, and Ryan Larson, a district court judge in Williamson County, both members of the church. No one knows what happened to the Heldenfels report. In fact, multiple people have told us that when they asked, church leadership denied there even being a second report. We've seen transcripts of church leadership denying a second report. When we reached out to the church for a comment, we did not receive a response. Heldenfels also declined to comment.
Based on that last school board meeting, it does appear that that Ryan report is out. Unfortunately, it got sent to ended up being sent to every deacon by email. So it was a 14-page report that was Ryan's opinion of the state of affairs at the time he wrote it. If you loved the school and you read that report, you would be disappointed. Some people would be angry.
A large part of the Larson report focused on an alleged school faction within the church that was described as disruptive, undermining, and being aggressively against the goals of the church. This alleged contingent was composed of a handful of prominent church members, including 4 of the church's deacons. One of those deacons was Bob Liverman.
The deacon body decided that 4 deacons were a disruptive force, and they basically put us on probation. We all had different, well, I think 4 of us, 2 of us had one punishment and 2 had another punishment. My punishment was I could apply for reinstatement in 2024 or something. I decided not to pursue that and resigned from deacon and from the Futures Task Force at that point. So there are 4 of us that the deacon body determined by vote that we were disruptive to the church, and so they asked us not to serve, basically.
The situation where the 4 former deacons were prosecuted was an example of intimidation and a denial of their rights of due process. And it was done by Dr. Bowman. He didn't agree with what they said. He didn't like what they were saying. And so there was a plan to try to silence them.
Larson didn't only talk about the faction, though. In fact, he covered several more subjects which he, at least at the time, perceived problematic. He discussed the school's overall effectiveness in stating that, while the school can demonstrate its academic success, it is unable to demonstrate its success in developing the Christian faith of its students. Of the families sending their children to school, more than 50% do not attend a church. There were claims of lax behavioral expectations for students and teachers. He discussed the much disputed facilities use agreement, the agreed upon cost that the school would pay the church for use of the facilities. He claimed that the school wanted to lower the agreement, and that when they couldn't, individuals within and otherwise associated with the school began a campaign against perceived obstacles like Kent Jennings. He also discussed the idea of a planned media retaliation from the school side. The school faction is engaging in character attacks to eliminate or neutralize individuals they see as obstacles to their plans. School faction members then escalated their attack, accusing Jennings of attempting to intimidate Messer. According to Pastor Bowman, the accusations involved the use of terms and references such as the Me Too movement, allegations of abuse of power, and intimidation. She then made a claim that appears to assert that Pastor Bowman covered up the employment attorney's actual investigatory findings. Leanne has been prohibited from public comment.
I think my words were laughable, but that was pretty demeaning towards Mrs. Messer, probably demeaning towards me.
What should also be noted is towards the end of the report, in a short footnote, Larson lists some of the factionalists, including one Fred Heldenfels. Of course, in an argument like this, you have to get in the last word, so Larson ended his report with this. In summary, if the church successfully resets its relationship with the school, both entities will be blessed with greater ministry opportunities. In turn, more residents of the Austin Metro will hear and respond to the gospel.
This summer, we got an email, kind of out of nowhere, from the school board telling all the parents that they were being escorted off of the board, basically.
Our school board, with all of our parent board members, had been completely replaced.
What happened was, back in the spring, the normal selection committee met, and they met as normally as they could. It's supposed to be chaired by a position on the board called the continuity director. That person that was filling that role resigned sometime in 2020 and didn't come anymore, which meant that there was no liaison and there was no chair of the selection committee. The remaining board members did what they could to keep moving on, and they created a selection committee using a provision in the bylaws to do that in the absence of a continuity director. They sent it to the church. The church didn't take any action on it, and that happened in 2020. So they, in the spring, put together another slate, sent it over to the church per the bylaws, and the church in writing declined.
We sensed something like this might be coming, and when we struggled for so long to get a slate presented to the church, we sensed that there was a really good chance that we were going to be removed. The church takeover of the school board was through a vote at the church of church members only, who were going to vote on a slate that was being presented by the church for school board members. The part I can't wrap my brain around is the school has never been more successful from a financial standpoint in terms of enrollment, everything. I mean, we feel like we're bringing more kids to Christ. What corporation that has their best year ever fires all their leadership, fires their board, and says, we can do better. And that's the part I don't really fully understand. And clearly the vote passed because it was what was recommended by the senior staff of the church.
The new board would be solely composed of church members and led by Randy Mott, a church member who has also spent time as the CIO for numerous large companies, including General Motors, Walmart, Dell, and Hewlett-Packard.
I feel that they were voluntold, essentially, to serve in those roles. If you look at their backgrounds, you have a lot of individuals who either work for the church, are married to people, or are children of people who work for the church. So there's, I don't want to call it incestuous, but there's, kind of a conflict of interest. They're individuals who could be told, you need to serve on this board, and we would like you to represent the church's interests.
The old school board was represented by current and former parents of Hyde Park School children. The new school board wasn't.
The church thought nobody was going to be paying attention. They would just replace the board, and that would be that, and we would move on, and they would get their $800,000 from the facilities use agreement, and nobody would bat an eye.
This, of course, brings us back to that facilities usage agreement Larson mentioned earlier in his report.
We had to come up with a formula that was tied to so much per child, $400 per student, as a reasonable rate for ACTABS, which is the accreditation agency that says that the church can only charge incremental cost. Then sometime in 2020, I guess 2019 it started, 2020, the church said, in essence, I'm the parent, I've raised the child, now the child needs to start taking care of the parent.
The church took it upon themselves to come up with a dollar amount that was based on really nothing.
The problem with that is that that's a direct violation of the ACTABS accreditation standards. So that's the core of academic excellence at Hyde Park. If you don't have ACTABS, then there is one big rock missing in every child's portfolio that they're going to college with.
The vote is as following. 203 voted in the affirmative, 51 voted in the negative. The affirmative has it, and the slate is adopted. This concludes our business. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.